Rainwater dripped slowly from the rusted roof of the small auto repair shop as Marcus Hill wiped grease from his hands with an old rag. The flickering light above him buzzed softly, casting long shadows across the cracked concrete floor. Marcus was tired. Not just the kind of tired that sleep could fix, but the kind that came from years of struggle, disappointment, and fighting just to survive. At 42 years old, Marcus was a single father raising his 8-year-old daughter, Lila, after his wife passed away 3 years earlier from a sudden illness. Marcus's entire world had collapsed overnight. Medical bills had swallowed their savings, and the repair shop he once proudly owned was now barely holding on. Still, Marcus never complained. Every morning before sunrise, he walked Lila to school with a warm smile, even if his stomach was empty. Every night, he'd tuck her into bed and told her stories about a better future. "You're gonna grow up and change the world, kiddo," he'd say. Lila would giggle and hug him tight. "You already did, Daddy." Those words kept him going. But business had been painfully slow lately. 3 days had passed without a single customer. Marcus leaned against the hood of an old chivvy and sighed, staring at the nearly empty street outside. The cold November wind pushed dust through the open garage door. He checked the small envelope in his pocket. Inside were the last $23 he had until the end of the week. Rent for the shop was overdue again. Electricity could be cut any day. And Christmas was only a month away. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment and whispered quietly to himself, "Just one good break. That's all I need." As if the universe had heard him. The faint sound of a struggling engine echoed from the road outside. Marcus looked up. A silver sedan had rolled to a stop just a few yards from the garage. The hood released a puff of smoke. A woman stepped out. She looked completely out of place in the rundown neighborhood, wearing a long coat, expensive heels, and carrying a leather handbag. She tried starting the car again. The engine sputtered weakly, then died. Marcus hesitated for a moment. He knew helping her might mean hours of work, and there was no guarantee she could pay. But Marcus had never been the kind of man who ignored someone in need. He grabbed his toolbox and walked outside. "Looks like your car's having a rough day," he said gently. The woman looked relieved the moment she saw him. "Oh, thank goodness. I was afraid I'd be stuck here all night." Marcus smiled warmly. "Let's take a look." Marcus lifted the hood and examined the engine carefully. The woman stood nearby, clearly nervous. "I'm sorry to trouble you," she said. "My name is Eleanor." "Marcus," he replied. Within minutes, Marcus could see the problem. The radiator hose had burst, and the engine had overheated badly. It wasn't a quick fix, but Marcus didn't mention that. Instead, he calmly got to work. The cold wind bit at his fingers as he removed parts, cleaned connections, and patched the damaged hose using spare materials he kept around the shop. Eleanor watched quietly. "You run this place alone?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "Yeah, just me." "What about employees?" Marcus chuckled softly. "Can't afford them right now." There was no bitterness in his voice, just quiet acceptance. After nearly 2 hours, Marcus finally stepped back and wiped sweat from his forehead. "Try starting it now." Eleanor turned the key. The engine roared to life smoothly. Her face lit up with relief. "Oh my goodness. You did it." Marcus smiled. "Should get you home safely, but I'd recommend replacing that hose soon." Eleanor reached into her purse. "How much do I owe you?" Marcus hesitated. Truthfully, he needed every dollar he could get, but something about her worried expression reminded him of his daughter. He shook his head. "Don't worry about it." Her eyes widened. "What? No, I insist." Marcus smiled gently. "Just help someone else when they need it. That'll be payment enough." Eleanor stared at him for a moment, clearly moved. "You're a good man, Marcus Hill." Marcus shrugged. "Just doing what anyone should." She thanked him again before driving away. Marcus watched the taillights disappear into the distance. Then he returned to the quiet garage. He had no idea that the woman he helped was far from ordinary, and he definitely had no idea what was about to happen the next morning. The next day started like any other. Marcus walked Lila to school before opening the garage. The sky was still grey and cold. Inside the shop, Marcus began organizing tools when a strange rumbling sound echoed down the street. He frowned. It sounded like multiple engines. Marcus stepped outside. What he saw made him freeze. One by one, 12 black SUVs turned onto the narrow road. They moved slowly, deliberately, like something out of a movie. Neighbors peeked out of windows. A few people gathered on the sidewalk, whispering nervously. The SUVs pulled to a stop in front of Marcus's shop. Doors opened. Several men in suits stepped out. Marcus's heart pounded. Did I do something wrong? He muttered. Then the rear door of the center SUV opened, and someone familiar stepped out. It was Eleanor, but she looked very different today. Gone was the nervous traveler from yesterday. Now she carried herself with confidence and authority. Marcus blinked in confusion. Eleanor walked toward him with a warm smile. Good morning, Marcus. Marcus scratched his head. I didn't expect to see you again. She glanced around the old garage, then back at him. You helped me yesterday without asking for anything in return. Marcus shrugged again. It was nothing. But Eleanor shook her head. No, Marcus. It was everything. She paused before continuing. You see, I wasn't just passing through town. Marcus looked puzzled. I was visiting properties owned by my company. One of the suited men stepped forward and handed Marcus a folder. Eleanor smiled softly. My family owns one of the largest automotive manufacturing companies in the country. Marcus's eyes widened. And yesterday, the man who runs the company that builds millions of engines was saved by a mechanic who barely has enough to keep his lights on. Marcus stood there speechless. Then Eleanor said something that would change his life forever. I think the world needs more people like you. Eleanor opened the folder and handed Marcus a document. He stared at it, confused. What is this? It's a partnership offer. Marcus blinked. A what? Eleanor gestured toward the shop. My company is launching a nationwide program to support small, independent repair shops. Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he flipped through the pages. We provide new equipment, training, and financial support. He looked up. Why me? Eleanor smiled warmly. Because yesterday you showed something money can't buy. She paused. Character. One of the men in suits spoke. Mr. Hill, the program will completely renovate your shop, clear your outstanding debts, and supply professional equipment. Marcus's knees nearly gave out. This can't be real. But Eleanor nodded. It is. Tears slowly filled Marcus's eyes. For the first time in years, the crushing weight on his shoulders felt lighter. I don't know what to say. Eleanor gently placed a hand on his arm. Say yes. Marcus laughed through tears. Yes, of course. The small crowd that had gathered outside began clapping. Marcus looked around in disbelief. After years of struggling alone, someone had finally seen him. But Eleanor wasn't finished. There's one more thing, she said. Marcus raised an eyebrow. What's that? She smiled. We are also offering you a management role in our regional training program. Marcus's mouth dropped open. You'll help teach young mechanics the values that saved my life yesterday. Marcus wiped his eyes again. I just fixed a car. Eleanor shook her head. No, Marcus. You showed the world what kindness looks like. 6 months later, Marcus's life looked completely different. The old garage had transformed into a modern repair center with bright lights, new tools, and a fresh sign above the door. Hill Family Auto Care. Inside, several young mechanics worked under Marcus's guidance. He taught them more than just engines. He taught them honesty, respect, and compassion. Every afternoon after school, Lila sat at a small desk in the corner doing homework while proudly watching her father. Daddy, she said one evening, you're famous now. Marcus laughed. I'm just a mechanic. But Lila shook her head. No, you're a hero. Marcus knelt beside her. You know what makes a hero, kiddo. What? helping people even when nobody's watching. Outside, a familiar SUV pulled into the parking lot. Eleanor stepped out with a smile. She walked inside the shop. Marcus greeted her warmly. "Checking on your investment." Eleanor shook her head. "No." She looked around the busy garage. "I'm checking on my friend." Marcus smiled. "You didn't have to do all this for me." Eleanor looked thoughtful. "Yes, I did. Because kindness like yours deserves to be seen." She glanced at the young mechanics working hard. "And now it's spreading." Marcus looked around the shop, his daughter, and the hopeful future he once thought impossible. All because one day, he helped a stranger without expecting anything in return. And sometimes, that's exactly how miracles begin.